So what gave you a conviction back? Just the general interest?
Really what it was is when something captures the attention of an entire planet, you have to start paying attention. And I kept thinking to myself, Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing budget. You know, if you think about Uber, right? Uber raised about $10 billion that they went and spent marketing Uber all over the world. Some information apparently is coming out now that their marketing tactics weren't all that scrupulous and all kinds of stuff. But
Well, it's
um,
just come out in the UK as well. There's somebody was having meetings with them. It wasn't a declared meeting. I think someone in office. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're trying to purchase a lot of influence. They're spending a lot of money on advertising. I remember times when like people were setting taxis on fire and protesting and things like this, right? And Paris was against it, London was against it, and then, but nothing's more powerful than an idea that whose time has come, right? And
Hmm.
when the people want something, they're going to get what they want. It may be like a circuitous path to it, but they're going to get what they want. And they wanted Bitcoin, they wanted some digital asset, right? And there was no marketing budget to do this. Yet across the entire planet, there was gaining interest in this. It was really amazing. And so I just kept thinking this is kind of a groundswell. This is really going to catch on and be a thing. Like we need to really get back in and be a part of this. So that was kind of what did it.
And this time we've had volatility again,
Yeah.
up again, down again, slightly different shape chart than 4 years ago. How come this time you haven't sold your Bitcoin and walked away?
I think this time you have to come back to the fundamental advances that
Okay.
we've had. When I started my Bitcoin fund and got into this space and would talk to others about it, everybody in the United States had the same concern, which is, oh, the government's going to take this away, regulatory issues, this is illegal, all this kind of stuff, right? And this was a very legitimate concern. There was big concern: how is China going to regulate? How's the U.S.? All these massive nation states who are potentially threatened by this digital asset, right? How are they going to react? And it wasn't until this administration and Gary Gensler, for all of his other flaws, um, Treasury Secretary, et cetera, all of this started kind of moving in a more positive direction. Cynthia Lummis, awesome. And so now I think we're at a point where we don't have regulation yet, but we've got a good deal of regulatory clarity that the US government is going to regulate this in a pragmatic way. And frankly, I think Bitcoin benefits from regulation. And so that takes the single biggest risk off the table.
Sorry, benefits from regulation or benefits from regulatory clarity?
Both,
Both.
both. I mean, regulatory clarity for sure. No markets like uncertainty, but actual regulation, for the independent libertarian individual, yeah, they don't want any regulation, regulatory clarity. They don't even want to hear the word. You're evil for just mentioning it, right? But in reality, um, if those people that love Bitcoin want to see it be successful on the scale that they expect, it is going to require institutional capital coming in. It's going to require truly high net worth individuals and family offices coming in. And those groups are reluctant to allocate serious capital until those guide rails are in place. And when they see that there are real rules and regulations and there's a tax treatment for it and, you know, different guidelines that they're meant to follow, then they're more comfortable allocating a significant portion of capital.
And are we even at the point yet that we have the right regulation for that to happen, or do you think we're approaching it?
We're approaching it.
We're approaching
We're
it.
approaching it. I think that all of those groups that I mentioned are now really focused on it. Some acknowledge the fact that, hey, it's at a low price now, and maybe it's at a low price because all this regulatory stuff isn't ironed out yet. So I might dip a toe, take a little risk here because the risk reward benefit is greater. But the truth is, I think at the end of the day, they're looking for a little more regulatory clarity. And that's across a broad spectrum, right? Like if you're a publicly traded company, it's very perilous to own Bitcoin and have it on your balance sheet. The tax structure is very punitive. That's under review now. Optimistic that that gets, you know, set to something more pragmatic. So all of these things need to kind of be ironed out before the real money is going to jump in.
Right, and we have had some real money jumping in.
Yep.
Uh, Obviously, we've had MicroStrategy, we've had Tesla,
Yep.
we've had Square. Have those companies had faced a lot of difficulty in actually setting up the structure so they could do this?
I don't think it's so much the difficulty of setting up the structure. MicroStrategy is kind of unique in the sense that it's pretty much their entire balance sheet. So investors will take the time to look through to, okay, what's the number of Bitcoin that you hold? I'll do the multiplication by the price and I'll come up with a value for that. And I can come up with a value for MicroStrategy with that as a factor plus the underlying business. But if you're, say, Apple, right? And you've got $60 billion or whatever it is on the balance sheet, and you say, yeah, I'd like to buy $5 billion worth of Bitcoin here. Well, the problem with that is if Apple goes and buys that $5 billion worth of Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin goes from 45,000 to 20,000 and they take a massive hit on that, right? And they lose, whatever that would be, a couple $1 billion. And then the way the accounting is now, they have to mark that down. And that shows up as an operating loss, as if Apple lost money selling iPhones, right?
Right.
And so when they miss their earnings by X number of cents, right, are investors really going to take the time to parse the balance sheet and see, oh, wait, that loss was due to this Bitcoin thing. And it's not really a loss, it's a paper loss. They didn't. And the truth is probably not. They're going
And
to
now
be like,
affect the share price.
exactly. They're going to be like, you missed earnings by a nickel. Like, and from Apple's point of view, they're like, yeah, we don't need this shit. Like, this is more headache than it's worth. So props to Elon for having the balls to do it. And yeah,
And so the tax treatment, is that being dealt with at the moment?
it is being reviewed.
It's
Yeah.
being reviewed. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the same way like holding shares on your balance sheet would be treated?
No, I think it's different. If you were to hold shares on your balance sheet, it's treated like if you could, and I'm not not in all cases you can't. But if you were to hold assets on your balance sheet in general, it's not treated as an operating loss from the operating company, generally speaking. It's like, oh, this money that you held or these investments that you had have become worth less, but your operating business delivered this.
I see.
Yeah. Interesting. And once that changes, what you think there's a wall of money that's going to come in, or it's just going to be just a bit easier. So you might, or is it going to be a case of someone like you getting out there and talking to people?
I think there's an education curve that people have to go up, but at least it makes it possible. Right now, if you were the CEO of a publicly traded company and you wanted to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, this would be a really legitimate deterrent. And I'm sure that those people exist and those companies exist. So I do feel like when this is solved, assuming it's solved in a good pragmatic way, and it should be solved, right? Because the purpose of accounting is to let people know what the financial state of the company is. And to have to carry Bitcoin on your balance sheet at the lowest price that it's been, not even the current price, right, is like very misleading. Pardon me. So if Bitcoin was at 40,000, went down to 20,000, and then came back up to 40,000, you would still have to reflect it at that 20,000 level, which is not accurate, right?
Right.
So I think when that changes, you're going to see a lot more capital come in. Is it going to be, I don't want to be all dramatic and be like, it's going to be a tidal wave of money coming in. They're all just waiting for this. But I think we'll see it. I think it'll make a material difference. And as you know, when any money comes into our space, there's such a limited supply that it doesn't take much.
So what about those companies that aren't those companies that aren't publicly traded or the high net worth individuals? Are there any challenges they face separate from the publicly
If
traded?
they're subject to GAAP accounting, which they're probably not in most cases, then no, they're not really.
You should probably explain GAAP accounting. Not just for me, but
Yeah,
for the
GAAP
listeners.
accounting in general is just it's the accounting method that all US publicly traded companies are held to. They must comply with this GAAP accounting, generally accepted accounting principles, maybe,
Oh, okay.
I think.
Okay.
And they have to follow those rules. Private companies, generally speaking, unless for some reason they're obligated to follow GAAP, don't have to follow those rules. So they should be able to buy Bitcoin and not have it be an issue.